Hi there. Happy Imbolc 2022. On this day is St. Bridget's Day. Also, remember that it's a day dedicated to healing. The other festival that's dedicated to healing is, of course, the summer solstice, when traditionally healing crystals, not so traditionally, the healing crystals were dedicated to the waxing sun. But anyway, this is dedicated to healing because Saint Bridget is the patron saint of healing. And I was going to do a video called Gnostics Should Not Mix the Planes, um, which is slightly on a bit paranoid, a little bit kind of a little bit antagonistic. Um, so I won't do that. I probably won't upload that video. Anyway, this is just to say that rather on this healing day, another one of my videos has been taken down by YouTube Google management on the charge of medical misinformation. And um, so I've had time to reflect on that because this is, after the 7 days of being banned from uploading videos. So now I'm on strike one, which means after April the 19th, I'm okay. But until then, if I get another strike, all my videos come down forever. So you better start saving your favorite videos now, downloading them just in case. And one's almost afraid to, in fact, to actually open one's mouth or upload videos to YouTube anymore. I say that also because a guy called Blue Drake, who does computer gaming videos, he made the same remark. A lot of people say to him that they are afraid to upload videos in case they get demonetized. And many of them, it's their livelihood, you know. So if they get demonetized, they have a drop in income. And they can get demonetized for all sorts of crazy reasons, according to YouTube, But this is community guidelines we're talking about, so this is even more basic than demonetization, which is bad enough. And then there's all this nonsense over DMCA strikes as well, which we won't go into here either. Um, I feel like I am in the middle of what Alex Jones called InfoWars, but of course he was just creating a kind of hysterical atmosphere, calling it InfoWars. Um, and we'll come back to him and his ilk a bit later. But I feel that I'm in the middle of an info war, um, and it's the best thing to do is to completely stay out of it all. And I guess making videos about healing sigils is sort of becoming part of that info war, which can only result in my being taken down from this network. So they win because they have the power, and I don't have any power at all. I don't even have any power to explain my position because I did appeal, but they just flatly ignored the appeal altogether. And I'm also pretty certain that either I've got my own little monitor, YouTube monitor, monitoring my videos, or somebody ratted me out. And my last video, which I was going to upload, called Gnostics should not mix the planes, was addressing the person who ratted me out, and why, in fact, they probably were justified in doing that. And we'll come on to that a bit later. I'll touch on that on this video. So I'm in the middle of an info war, and really I don't want to know about it. Because let me say, I am a supporter of scientific enlightenment, um, which is basically the manipulation of natural forces to the betterment of man, animal, and environment using the scientific method and empirical data. And ever since the Enlightenment started, the 18th century, of course, there's been a burgeoning of scientific discovery and technological innovation, obviously, as we enjoy it today. And without the vaccine program for COVID-19, for example, we would be in absolute dire straits by now. After 2 years, economic ruin would accompany just about every country in the world, or every country in the world. And I would, honestly be saying that civilization is pretty much affected by the pandemic in various fundamental ways. And this is no joke, and this is no piece of fiction on anyone's part. It's it's about as real as death itself. Um, but of course, over the years, people have criticised the scientific method on various levels, moral levels, ethical levels, even philosophical levels. Um, and I mean, one thing is certain about the scientific method and technology and science altogether is that you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, which basically means that some things there has been a lot of collateral damage as a result of scientific discoveries and technological innovation. But they intended well, intended good, and they intended the best of all possible worlds. But of course, there has been collateral damage. For example, there has been terrible mercury pollution in Japan and radioactive pollution as well. You can't have electricity generation without the risk of having nuclear power and all the attendant risks of that particular industry. Um, but some countries may be totally regretting that they didn't go down the nuclear path by now, actually, because they're running out of electricity generation potential capacity as the population grows. Um, and there's no doubt about it that in order to step away, in order to serve the higher good, sometimes you have to step away from the good. So, for example, vivisection is immoral, but in order to benefit animals and human beings, it's been necessary to test drugs on animals, and that's just a scientific fact. Okay. Now, admittedly, also it's true that as anti-vivisectionists say, we are the true guinea pigs. That's not entirely true. Well, that's not true actually. Only true to a certain percentage. But we fall back on the other first principle, which is that can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. We are indeed the ultimate guinea pigs of any medical procedure and vaccine program. But with the help of animal testing, the risks to human life and human well-being are less than the benefits, and we always have to make a calculation of risk versus benefit, and that goes for nuclear power, vaccines, keyhole surgery, everything that you can possibly, computers, mobiles, microwaves, blah blah blah. There are risks, but the benefits outweigh the risks. So after rigorous testing and rigorous investigation by the FDA and other agencies that protect human beings from the excesses of science, we have broadly established a balance, I think. Um, but it is a dynamic balance. So obviously, some things come up from time to time, which seems to suggest that there's more risk to science than there is benefit. But on the whole, there is more benefit than risk, more benefit than harm. I would have to say there's always risk, but the benefits do outweigh the risks ultimately. And an action is good insofar as it maximizes the happiness of the greatest number. If you don't, and that's I think a philosophical truism that has now become well established, really, through philosophical investigation. It's called utilitarian argument, modern utilitarian argument. And obviously, if you're not part of the greatest number, then you might be saying, "Well, I feel rather left out of this good. It didn't do me any good." Sort of thing. So, but on the other hand, we try and ameliorate the good, the harm that's done to you as much as we possibly can, because everybody is an individual. There's no doubt about that, and has individual human rights. So whilst it is true that an action is good insofar as it maximises the happiness of the greatest number, it's also got to protect the minorities, the vulnerable of our society, from the mistakes that science can make, for example, and from the risks involved in scientific discovery and technological innovation. And so scientific enlightenment, I mean, it's trying to understand the forces of nature in order to manipulate them for the benefit of human, animal, and environment. And that's certainly true. It's always been true. It's always been the intention, and science has more or less got it right. And we are enjoying now the fruits of science, and the fruits of the sciences, including things like sociology and economic science as well. We're trying to understand how we behave in a macro kind of way. But of course, the media have also highlighted where science has gone wrong, and people have always been rather had misgivings about science and technology, really from Mary Shelley onwards, really from Frankenstein onwards. The stories abound, warn against unbridled scientific discovery, and certainly governments take that into account as well. Um, but of course, we now come on to and as I said in my last video, I as a spiritual healer, I don't have anything against allopathic medicine or mainstream medicine at all. I work with that medicine. I don't work against it. I provide healing modalities as well as the mainstream healing. But according to the guidelines, YouTube's community guidelines, that is still medical misinformation. So I can't even say that you do A, B, and C, as well as have the vaccines and see doctors and have steroids and follow the advice of your professional medical care professional caregiver. I can't even say that because that's medical misinformation to make any reference at all to anything that has not have been approved scientifically, or more to the point, approved by the World Health Organization or some other agencies like that, the Federal Drug Administration, for example, in the US, which is pretty draconian, really, I think, anyway. Because but when and I don't sort of blame them because they're up against the scientific community is up against another community, which are the what we believe is true brigade, as I've called it here. And the thing about that is that they are believers in all sorts of things, which basically a lot of it amounts to superstition. And as the character Sherlock Holmes says, something can seem logical. You can make it a logical inference, but if your data is lacking, you're going to come to the wrong conclusion. So often, conspiracy theorists, um, they have a logical sort of pathway from A to B, from cause to effect. But because they don't have enough of the facts, they just get it completely wrong. And very often it's all muddled up with actual psychiatric paranoia. And we have there's a whole, what we believe is true. We have a whole lot of sort of a cloud of superstition and conspiracy theories and antis, sort of the whole anti-brigade. And I have a whole list of them here, including, of course, anti-science. Science is a belief system. So we're a belief system, but they're a belief system. So, it's a battle between two belief systems, apparently, anti-science and science, anti-psychiatry, for example, as well, psychiatry using antidepressants and things like that, which actually do work. But again, there are side effects. You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. And for these side effects, a whole movement has grown up being anti-psychiatry, throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing, which is another thing conspiracy theorists actually readily do. Um, and there are loads more. There's a whole list of anti, which you've probably read by now. Um, you know, Anti-state, very much anti-state. This whole idea that the media are embarked on a campaign of disinformation from the state. The state likes to either invent threats or create threats so that it can rule through fear. And indeed, you will have heard plandemic, scamdemic, and even hystemic. Hystemic means collective hysteria about over something which is totally imaginary. So we have all these people being anti everything, and they're usually quite right wing as well: anti-immigration, anti-gay, anti-liberal, anti-feminist, anti-secularist, anti-socialist for definite, anti-immigration, for example. Anti-China, anti-India. There's a conspiracy theory that China and India and Pakistan are embarked on a campaign to dominate the whole world. Even though COVID-19, for example, which has been cited as a biological weapon set loose on the world by the Chinese, even though China and India have had terrible consequences as a result of COVID-19. So why on earth uh, would they choose that as a biological weapon against the West when they have been so destroyed by it? But then again, conspiracy theorists then come back and say, "Oh well, they're quite prepared to kill off millions of their own people in order to destroy the West," so sort of like a suicide bomber kind of scenario. So again, but without the facts, who needs facts when you have theories? And if theories make logical sense, it stands to reason that this will, then you don't need, you can just point the finger at anyone and condemn anybody without the least basis of fact. And facts are values anyway, so they say. So you don't need facts. So we end up going into the dark ages of superstition and burning witches for no reason, burning people for witchcraft. Because it all makes logical sense. But there are no facts to back up your theories. And this is what medical misinformation is really saying. It's saying that people don't have any medical facts to hand. They just have logical theories and inferences from inadequate data on which they base all their superstitious nonsense and what they believe is true. So they have this thing that whatever we believe is true anyway. So we are going to point fingers and blame people and blame governments and blame the big pharma and all that, completely unjustifiably. Naturally, the scientific community is very worried about it, and of course I should have known really that this is a desperate issue because it's come to something when scientists demonstrate in New York about protecting science from superstition. I mean, who would ever think that in this century scientists would be on the defensive, But no doubt this whole medical misinformation sort of this worry about medical misinformation vis-a-vis COVID-19 um, is based on the fact that these two communities, what we believe is true community and scientific enlightenment community, is very much raging as an info war, and you can't even be reconciliatory between the two. You can't even say, well, we need science and technology, but we can also lay our hands on people to give them spiritual healing. You can't actually say that. You can't say that over COVID-19, and who knows, eventually it'll spread from COVID-19 to everything. And you won't be able to say a lot of things about spiritual healing and the use of healing sigils and entities and things like that, because it'll all be dubbed medical misinformation about everything. At the moment, it's just COVID-19, but it will spread. So this could happen because we are in the midst of a war between between moderates and extremists, because scientists are moderate people, they're open-minded people by definition, but they're dealing with a sort of broad cult of antis who are completely brainwashing each other, who are completely hysterical and completely irrational, and who live in a world which makes perfect sense to them, but which actually doesn't make any sense whatsoever when you look at the actual facts of the matter. As a Gnostic, I have no problem with science. I do have a problem actually with what we believe is true brigade, because they're just so, you know, they will take a couple of facts and they'll run with them and they'll make 5 out of 2 + 2, and you just can't deal with people like that at all. And I suppose YouTube's community guidelines are basically dealing with this broad-based movement or cult almost of David Icke and Alex Jones sort of cults that are extremely powerful because for decades they've been saturating the internet with their superstition and their conspiracy theories to such an extent now that people believe David Icke more than they believe, I don't know, Reuters news group, because everybody says, well, of course, Reuters news group are in the pay of big pharma. Everybody knows that, but you don't have any evidence for that accusation at all. But you don't need evidence. You see, you can just string them up anyway. It's a kangaroo court. You've already found them guilty before you've even tried them. So I can't stand what we believe is true brigade. And it could be that somebody looked at my video of COVID, VD Codex X1X, and decided that my healing sigil fell into the area of superstition, in the area of medical misinformation, in the area of the what we believe is true brigade. And they took umbrage and they ratted me out. And maybe they are probably people that are on the side of so-called scientific Illuminism, or magic with a K. And scientific Illuminism is very complex subject indeed, fraught with philosophical difficulties, I might add. But basically, it's a systematic investigation of so-called non-localized intelligences through independent replication. And for example, you have a system called Goetic demonology or Goetia, and you follow a certain method and you invoke an entity which makes certain truth claims about itself and about the world, which has certain characteristics about itself which are obvious. And basically, what you do is that several magicians over the world do the same method, invoke the same entity, and if they get exact results, same results, if their entity makes the same truth claims about the world and about themselves as the original magical group found, then it's supposed to be that you're getting somewhere. It could be that you really got a non-localized intelligence here, who is actually telling you stuff which is consistently true about itself, and perhaps you have an intelligence, the existence of which is proven, and the truth claims that this intelligence makes, it could be anything about healing, money, anything really, could actually be true. It could be actually what the intelligence has the ability to do, which is not medical misinformation, because you have proved through what they call independent replication that you have something here, that you are investigating something, not just your own psychology, not just creative expression or mischief making or egotism. You actually are looking at something which is real and real and existent, in the same way as a chemist investigates real chemicals, real atoms, and the behavior of real atoms in a test tube. You are looking at real non-localized intelligences who are offering real services or real benefits to human, animal, and environment, which you, as a magical community, have discovered and systematically discovered and set down and recorded for other people to come along and investigate and find the same information, which is the basis of scientific empiricism, which is why I call it scientific Illuminism. Um, but be that as it may, though, and of course, a person might say, well, your healing sigil has not been investigated empirically by anybody except by yourself. So it's probably a load of old bunk, isn't it, really? We don't know. So it does fall into medical misinformation, number one. Number two, it falls into the, what we believe is true brigade. And you have to admit that, which is why I ratted on you, which is why, you've got a strike one against your channel. So as I say, I've decided I don't want to get involved in this info wars. I don't want to get in trouble with the magicians. I don't want to get in trouble with the scientists. I don't want to get in trouble with the superstition mongers of the what we believe is true brigade. Um, I just want to stick to Gnosticism, basically, which is a great idea. And Gnosticism is very simple, really. Gnostics know that God is real, and they know that God is not of this world, and they know that this world consists of science, superstition, magic, art, politics, economics, the whole bally show of it. And God is not of any of this kind of stuff that's going on. The stuff of the universe is not God, and God is not in the stuff of the universe. But God has made himself, herself, itself. Uh, there has been a revelation brought by messengers from God, for example, Jesus Christ, but also the angels and the martyrs and other mystics. And they have had an experience of, well, mystics certainly have had an experience of mysticism, of the numinous and of the here and now, from which they have had direct knowledge that God is real and that God is not of this world, and that God is revealed through the actions of messengers and avatars. And so that's just Gnosticism. I mean, and basically you express the numinous, the here and now. You express the central doctrine of Gnosticism, which is God exists and God is not of this world. You express that as best you can by any means that you can. And basically, you stick to that expression. You don't go speculating about who God is or what God is, or what gender God is, if any gender. You try not to speculate on occult matters, so called, and you try not to come up with healing sigils and magical systems and magical alphabets, and you try not to say that God has spoken in this language or this language. You try not to speculate. You're just saying that God is the supreme object of in the universe of devotion, and that God is not of this world. And these two facts are as real as the action of an acid on an alkaline, of an acid on a base metal, for example. They are as true as magicians claim their angels and demons are, through empirical investigation. But you are not going to get involved in info wars at any level. You're not at war with people over this. If people don't believe in God and they don't believe that's fine. That's no problem. I'm a humanist, secularist, and materialist. There's no problem. They could be that if they want to be. But to be a Gnostic, you have to accept that God is real, God is existent, God is not of this world, and that God is revealed through the action of messengers, recognized by people who have had a numinous experience of the here and now. I think that's basically all that can be said about Gnosticism, really. But having said that, my channel has said an awful lot about Gnosticism, hours and hours and hours of videos. and speculation and various other things. Um, and for what? Uh, Basically, to the point where I've allowed myself to get involved in the fight between complementary medicine and allopathic medicine, for example, which has absolutely nothing to do with Gnosticism, as indeed magic. Scientific Illuminism has nothing to do with Gnosticism, and scientific Enlightenment has nothing to do with Gnosticism, and certainly what we believe is True Brigade, they have nothing to do with Gnosticism either. And once we've properly established that, and stayed away from these three sort of areas of knowledge, and stuck to expressing gnosis or Gnosticism, then I think there is no problem. But I guess somebody on YouTube, or somebody, one of my subscribers, has a problem with me trying to link Gnosticism with magic and science and David Icke and Alex Jones and all the rest of them, because really I should really keep out of all those areas altogether. Basically, all face the charge of medical misinformation, despite the fact that I include complementary medicine recommendations along with allopathic medicine recommendations. It's still misinformation, according to YouTube, and it's still getting muddled up, getting Gnosticism muddled up with a whole lot of superstition, magic, and science, which basically um, have literally nothing to do with Gnosticism. And basically, you have to bracket Gnosticism right out of everything that's going on around you in the world. Um, that's not to say you don't behave ethically. You do behave ethically. You don't step away too much from the good in order to serve the good. You serve the good by not stepping away from the good. You yourself as an individual behave ethically, or as ethically as you can in this world. So it's not that you're sort of renouncing the world in a non-ethical way. It's just that you know what gnosis is, and gnosis is not scientific illuminism. It's not the scientific enlightenment, and it's not superstition. It's not David Icke and Alex Jones, and it's not the anti-immigration, anti-gay, anti-liberal people either. It's nothing to do with them. So I suppose this video has combined information with the last video that I was going to upload. Hopefully it has anyway. And all I can say is that really I apologize, basically, for talking about healing sigils and magic, which and when I should be talking about Gnosticism, because this is a channel about Gnosticism, not about magic, science, or conspiracy theories and superstition and all the strange beliefs that people have. You can believe whatever you like, and you can know whatever you want to know, and you can be presented with facts, but they've nothing to do with Gnosticism, because they're all to do with the lower worlds. Gnosticism is to do with everything that is not of this world, but of God.